Welcome to the Disney Parks Podcast with your hosts, Tony Casanova from DisneyByTheNumbers.com and Parkhopper John from WDWParkhoppers.com. Keep your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the podcast at all times. And get ready for the Disney Parks Podcast.
Have you ever come to Orlando and you're the person that has to make all the dining plans, all the fast passes, get all the tickets? Well, we have a service that can help you do this. This is the best service. They are themeparkconcierge.com. You can call them up at 407-257-9973. Tell them your plans. They'll send you a little profile, get some information about you and your traveling party and what you want to do, what you don't want to do. And then they can set up a custom plan for you. And they'll take you around the parks. They'll make the dining plans. They'll get the fast passes. They'll take you to Walt Disney World. They'll take you to Universal. They'll take you to Busch Gardens, to SeaWorld, to Legoland, to all of those places. And they will do all of the work for you. Contact them at themeparkconcierge.com. Check them out on Facebook at facebook.com/Ramon VIP Concierge, or email them at ramon@themeparkconcierge.com. I am telling you, you will not be disappointed. And if you tell them the Disney Parks Podcast sent you, you'll get 10% off your order.
Welcome to the show, everybody. We have got a great interview. We have not one, but two amazing people who have an incredibly magical story. We have Suzanne and R.J. Ogren, who are former Walt Disney World cast members who worked in a variety of roles at the Magic Kingdom during the 1970s and 80s. Now, they currently reside near Chicago, and they also have several other incredibly creative endeavors, and we're going to hear about that as well. Welcome to the Disney Parks Podcast. Suzanne and RJ, how are you doing? Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Doing great.
Doing
Good to be here.
Yeah, it's Monday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please don't remind me.
We're doing really good.
Good.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We like to ask everybody really how their Disney journey began, how they got involved with the Disney company, how their passion started. Do you guys want to tell us how that all happened for you?
With us, it started, of course, I think most people say that. We were kids. We grew up with the Mickey Mouse Club and Wonderful World of Disney on TV and everything else. And I got to go to Disneyland first when I was stationed in California when I was in the Navy. And then after I did one tour in Vietnam, we got married and then took Suzanne to Disneyland for her very first time.
On Christmas Day.
Wow.
And before I was going back to Vietnam, what fun. But at that point, we decided that somehow, someday, we were going to work with Disney in any capacity. And then when I got out of the service and went to the University of Miami, and we, of course, by then knew they were building the Magic Kingdom at Disney World, and we moved there, and we're trying to get a job with Disney, having a tough go of it to get them to hire us to load people on attractions because we
both had college degrees.
Yeah, they actually told us we were overqualified to work.
Gosh.
And then through some very strange series of incidents, I went in to join the National Guard and met a master sergeant that I was signing papers with, and he knew the guy who was head of hiring for Disney, and the next thing I knew, I was a monorail pilot.
Wow.
It's a very bizarre story.
Especially for an artist who wanted to be an artist for Disney.
And there was our dream. We figured, well, we got our foot in the door, and I thought I was going to stay in operations and work my way up. And then 6 weeks into driving monorails, a little ad came out in the Eyes and Ears company newspaper, and I put in to be an artist, which was a management position, and luckily beat out 13 other very good artists, and suddenly my whole life changed.
Wow.
And I, who had been trying to get on at Disney as an entertainer because I was a dancer, when he moved out of monorails, the supervisor in his area got me in the door, basically, because I kind of took RJ's job. And I ended up being a monorail pilot for a year and a half before I could get a dance audition and be in the character department, which was my dream come true.
Wow.
But it took me almost 2 years to get there.
It didn't help that I suddenly was in management, because then I had told them on monorails that I knew somebody better that could take my place. When they said who, I said my wife. They knew Suzanne.
Right.
And that happened. And then when she was on monorails, I literally wore down Frank Riddy, who was head of the
character. He was manager of the character.
Manager of character department.
Frank is still there, by the way. He just celebrated his 40th anniversary with Disney.
Yeah, every couple of weeks I made sure I went to have lunch when I knew he would be there, and he'd see me coming. Well, not again. And he finally gave in, and Suzanne got her audition and got into characters.
Wow. That's crazy.
It was crazy. We always tell people when we do speaking engagements, never look what may look like a nothing job, and say, oh, I don't want that, because it can always lead to something else, so.
Yeah, and you want to know how I beat out those other 13 artists?
No, we're not going to tell that whole story.
No, I'm not going to tell the whole story. But what had happened was I had actually, prior to going on with Disney, I had been at a very low point because of the recession at that time in the early 70s, and I was repairing vinyl chairs in restaurants and hotels, and I hated it, but it was keeping food on the table, and until something better would come along and my art would pick up again. And it turned out when it came down to selecting me over the other artists that it was because I was the only one that had done anything with heat with vinyl, because the skins on the figures of the audio animatronic figures are reconfigured hot melt vinyl glue, and we had to use heat to melt the skins together and everything else and trim them. And also the paint I used on those stupid vinyl chairs was acetone paint, which was the same paint we used on the faces of the figures at Disney World.
Wow.
I was the only one that had done that. So the vinyl chairs got me a job as a Disney artist.
Wow. That's amazing. I thought you hired a private investigator and he dug up some dirt on them, and that's what I would have done. I wouldn't have thought about doing it. Do you remember about what year you both started?
Oh yes,
yeah,
1976.
Yeah, I started right at the beginning of '76.
Yeah,
and I
incredible.
started in May or something like that. I think it was May of '76. Yeah.
That was the year of my first visit to the parks.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yep.
Well, you saw.
I may have driven you on a monorail.
And you may have seen my artwork with the three other artists, because we worked on all the figures and all the attractions.
Yeah.
All the pets came under us, and all the props and all the murals.
Well, we're going to dig in to some of the stories that we want to hear about when you were working on the parks. But you guys have a couple books. We'd like to kind of get a quick overview. Could you tell us about Remembering the Magic? Can you tell us a little bit about that book?
Well, Remembering the Magic is actually the second book we wrote. The first one, which is called Together in the Dream, talks something about what we just told you about how we got on at Disney and our beginnings of our career, and Remembering the Magic. The first book did really well, and our publisher, Theme Park Press, asked if we would do a second one. And RJ and I looked at each other and said, "Did we have enough stuff to tell in another book?" And found out not only did we have enough, but we also were able to call upon people we had worked with to also tell some of their stories. And our children, who both ended up working at Disney World, our daughter at Epcot for almost 8 years, and our son, while he was going to college at the what was then Disney MGM Studios, they each have a chapter in Remembering the Magic. So that was a lot of fun for us to put that book together. And we've really had fun working together, because we did alternating chapters. He would tell his story, then you'd hear a chapter of me, and then back to him. And that was fun, too. We have a new book that we just started working on that's going to be out early next year sometime. And it's going to be the history of Disney World, but told from personal perspective. In other words, our experiences not only working, but also as guests, taking our kids there, stories from other people that were in on the beginnings of Disney and on up through today that have their own stories to tell. And woven within all of that will be factual things about how Disney was built and the attractions and how they changed and why. And so it's going to be a totally different kind of book for us, but we're really excited about doing it.
That's great because, when we go, Tony and I both go to different things. Like he just got done doing a luncheon thing with Marty Sklar, and he got to hear some of those stories. We as Disney fans, like Tony just said, he went to Disney for the first time in 76. I've really only been going to Disney for the last 10 years. I had never really spent and invested any time in the Disney parks because it just wasn't part of my upbringing. So I've kind of fallen in love with Disney in my adulthood.
And you didn't have crazy parents that made you go in the back of a station wagon from New Jersey to Florida every year.
Well, I had crazy parents, not in the same way.
Lucky you.
Right.
Well, now we had children that because we were both in management and we could get into the parks anytime for free, they went to Disney probably once a week, at least twice a month. And they did that through their entire growing up process and thought that all kids did this. And when they were old enough to understand, we explained to them, there are people who only come here once in their lifetime, and they thought we were lying to them. Because Disney was their playground. They went there all the time.
But what I love about the books that you guys are creating are telling stories that, Disney fans don't always hear. When we went to D23 a couple years ago, we got to hear, Alice Davis talk about meeting Walt and her husband, and they were talking about creating, It's a Small World attraction. And those stories are getting lost. So books like what you're creating are so important because you're really telling the history of the parks.
Alice Davis is a very good. Alice, of course, Mark was one of our bosses.
Right.
Hollywood Studios, and Alice Davis has been a very good friend, and she wrote the foreword for Together in a Dream, the first book.
Yeah.
What does it sink in to you guys? Like when you tell me that, my jaw hits the floor because the Davises. I mean, that's like, to me, that's like royalty. Does that even compute?
We still can't believe that we still talk to Alice on a regular basis by phone, and she's still telling us stories. We're still learning about things that Mark did and that they both had a chance to do. And of course, they were also very close friends with Leota Toombs, who was an incredible artist with Disney, and R.J. worked with her as well, but we've also learned great stories about Leota.
Right.
So that kind of stuff never gets old. And I have a dear friend, Gene Columbus, he did everything at Disney. He was a show director, he did all kinds of stuff, and when I was working with him in convention entertainment, he was the head of that area, resort entertainment, and he now heads up a fantastic children's theater called the Orlando Rep right there in Orlando, and it's considered like the second best theater for children in the United States.
It's in Lake Eola Park. It's what used to be the
not Lake Eola Park. It's in Lock Haven Park. But anyway, he read our books, and he said to me, these should be in the archives of Disney because of the stories they tell.
Wow.
He said there's so many books about Disney history or about, Walt or Eisner or Roy or whoever it was. But these are just so personal and things that people want to know about. And it's like, he said he has done an oral history thing that Disney Archives had him do. And he said, I really think you guys should push to get these books in the archives. And of course, we have not pursued that, but we do have a contact there. That may happen at some point, which would thrill us no end. Because we do feel like that these are stories people never hear.
Right.
What's fun is to hear from people who've read our books and our fans, which sounds kind of funny to say that. But we have a lot of followers now, and of course I do a lot of paintings, and I have a lot of people involved in that. But to hear them say, we read your book, and then when we went to Disney this time, we saw the attractions and we saw the characters and everything with a whole different perspective.
Right.
And it made it even more fun.
Yeah.
And that's pretty neat to hear.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I wish 20,000 Leagues was still there, because the four of us were certified scuba divers.
Me
And
too.
we in fact, I was the only one of the four that actually was trained and certified at Disney World after I got the job as the artist. And I was certified when I had to swim in Seven Seas Lagoon. And actually, I went out with the guy who was doing the certification. We both had our wetsuits on and our tanks and everything, and we swam down, around, and in through the wave machine.
Wow.
That by the
one that never worked.
Poly, yeah.
Yeah, out by the poly, yeah.
Yeah, not many people can say that.
Many people.
We also played a lot of practical jokes and stuff on each other, the four of us artists, and because we were mostly on our own, we made a lot of our own decisions, and we'd always decided to go swimming every couple of weeks in 20K.
So if you were working there now, you wouldn't have that opportunity.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes we actually were working. Other times in the early morning, we were just having fun.
Wow,
that's amazing.
But the fact that you said one of you has been there since almost the beginning, right. Your first visit, and the other one the last 10 years, right. We talk about that because when we go back to the parks now, we try to divorce ourselves from what was, because we don't want to think, oh, that's not there anymore. Why isn't that there? And we just enjoy what the park is now, and it's so gigantic. I mean, the whole property just leaves us breathless. We get lost, actually. We used to know all the back roads and all the ways to go in and out of places, and now we're like, are we on the right road? I don't know where we're going.
Yeah, that everything's changing.
Yeah.
It's even worse now. They're doing even more construction.
Yeah, more road construction, too.
Down there in December. They need to hurry and get that done.
Yeah. You don't know about that.
No, I know. Star Wars isn't going to be done for another year and a half.
So
sorry.
What are all the jobs that you guys did have? And once you got into, say, Suzanne Entertainment and you, RJ, into artists, was that it? You guys just stayed there and that's how you ended your careers at Disney, or did you go out and do other things then?
Yeah, for me, that was it. I was there I was in the position until early 1980, and by then Glenn, we had just hired Glenn as the fifth artist. I was doing a lot of training with him, or training him, and as it turned out, he actually ended up taking my place. It was... People are kind of surprised when they realize I left after such a short time. But what I realized was with Epcot that two of us were going to be sent back to the back of the property to a big warehouse and work with 50 other new artists. And I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. And then we found out that the figures in Spaceship Earth were actually the pirates with different face colorings and hair, and that the figures in Mexico were the Small World dolls with different costumes, and the American Pavilion, all the figures were being done in California. So I'm going like, well, what's new? There's nothing new we're working on. Right. And I wanted to stay in the Magic Kingdom where I was and just continue that.
Well, the four of you were like a family.
Yeah, it was never the same after the four of us left. It was pretty crazy. A lot of the Disney legends were still working with us. So yeah, that was it. And the crazy thing is, though, that after I left Disney, I've continued over the years to do stuff for Disney.
I think a lot of people do that in the creative space. I think it's for a couple of reasons. One is they love it, and B, they just can't stop doing it.
Yeah, we've always told people once you work for Disney, you never leave it, even if you're not working for them anymore. Because every job that you go to, they want, oh, you work for Disney. What did you do? It's like an intro to your life.
Yeah. Every commission I get on paintings or murals or even doing scenic design, which I do for plays, it's because of my Disney background as an artist.
Yeah. Did we hear, Suzanne, all the different things that you did?
Well, I was a monorail pilot, and then I was a character, which, as I said, was my dream come true as far as performing for Disney. Unfortunately, while I was in that job, for about a year, I had 3 or 4 very serious accidents, which ended my being able to perform on stage. And that being because I had 2 really bad injuries to my knees. I had to make a very tough decision to leave for that reason, health-wise, but also because I had a 2-year-old at home that did not want mommy working. And so I decided to leave Disney, not knowing that, wanting to come back at some point, but not knowing if that was going to be possible. And then 5 years later, in 83, I left in 78, through some connections again, I was able to get a job, and I knew I was not going to be able to work on stage because my injuries were permanent. And so I worked in the background, and I originally was hired to work for the director of transportation and had an office on Main Street up above the ice cream shop.
Wow.
Nobody knows. A lot of people don't know that there are offices up there, lots of them.
I really envied her.
Yes. Yeah. And in that same group of offices were the entertainment people. Some of them were on that side of Main Street, some were on the other side of Main Street over the Emporium. And I made connections, and after a couple of years, I was working in special events. Then I got a job in resort entertainment. I mean, I just kept moving around and doing all kinds of fun things. And every time I moved, I had a different office. I had one in the Contemporary Hotel for a while. I was in the bank building over in what was then the Disney Village.
Right.
And just everywhere. And my last job, which was convention entertainment, by that time, Disney had grown from the 2 hotels I had known when I came there, the Contemporary and the Poly. There was the Grand Floridian, which I was able to be in when it was being constructed, which was so exciting because that place was gorgeous from the time they started building it from the ground. And to watch that go up and then start seeing things like the Swan and the Dolphin and there was just hotel after hotel going up. And in each of those, because Eisner was in charge at that time, he wanted them all to have convention facilities. And that meant that we had to have a staff in each of those hotels to run the convention entertainment end of it. So I spent most of my days in my last position there in my car. I actually had a expense account to drive around property because a lot of people don't realize how big Disney World is, twice the size of Manhattan. Right. I would go from hotel to hotel working with my staffs and coordinating things, and my big boss and I hardly ever saw each other because we were going in opposite directions all the time. And what?
Well, then you went back into the...
and then when it got to be to a point where I just felt like I'd lost some of the Disney magic. I had an office that was 20 minutes outside of property. I was doing nothing but driving back and forth all day. I wasn't seeing the people that much that I liked working with. It had become a chore, kind of. Right. And a chore that involved a lot of hours. My family was complaining about it. And so I said, you know what? I don't want to leave Disney. I still want to be part of this. But there's got to be a way for me to get back into the Magic Kingdom. So again, see, this works at Disney, or at least it did when it was still in its infancy, more or less. I had a friend who was the head of personnel for the Magic Kingdom, and she got me a job working at the Haunted Mansion as a hostess. Wow. And people said I was nuts because I was making like half the money I had been making in my other job. But I said, you know what? I'm at the point now where I just want to enjoy the guests, have a good time, clock in, clock out. I don't take the job home with me, which is what my family was complaining about. Right. And the last year and a half I was there until I had another injury to my foot was fun for me. I really enjoyed it. It was like going back and looking around and seeing that castle again every morning when I went to work. And the Disney thing never leaves you. We have people now that ask us, are you going to move back to Florida and work for Disney? No. We work for Disney in a different way now, by telling our stories.
Yeah, that was in 94 when she left. I actually enjoyed it when she was back in the attractions, because then I'd go out and I'd sometimes take her to work, and then because I needed the car, and I'd come back and pick her up, and I'd be there when the attraction would close down. I'd still go backstage and go into the attraction. I would sit in the office with the lead or the supervisor while she was checking things out in the Haunted Mansion, and but I would pull little things. I in particular, we was there one night, and I said to the lead there, I said, "You do know that there's a red light in the hearse in this graveyard?" He goes, "No, there's not." I went, "Yes, there is." He said, "No, yes, there is." Yeah, I says, "Look, when the light goes out, unless somebody tells the maintenance people to put another bulb in, they're not going to do it because that's one less thing they have to do. That's just the way it goes." So he looks in they have a big manual and all the attractions. They have all the stuff in it. So he looks it up and he went, "I'll be damned." So he says, "There is a red light." We ran out and looked into the carriage and the hearse, and he goes, and we look up and there's the bulb. And so he went and put in an order for maintenance to put a red bulb in. They were very unhappy. They wanted to know who told them about their red light.
Wow.
And I believe when we were there, the last time we were there a couple of years ago, the light wasn't on again. So.
Yeah. I was going to say, I haven't seen it in a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my tenure total actually working was almost 14 years.
Wow.
So I get a pension, he doesn't. So,
Sweet.
you know.
But we were there for so many things that happened and so many things that opened. I was at the groundbreaking for Epcot with John Hench and Marty Sklar and, of course, Jane Polgar and Tom Radowski and Lee Nessler.
And I was working when the original Star Wars attraction opened at the studios, and there was a parade with George Lucas and all of the, they had Chewbacca there and Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill, and they were all there for the opening of that. And at the same time, the Muppet 3D show was in process, and Henson was there and everything working. He was still working on it. So those kind of things are, just singular moments in your life that you never forget.
Right.
Those are the good old days. Yeah.
Yeah. Priceless moments, especially, when Jim Henson's no longer with us, Carrie Fisher's no longer with us. Yeah. George.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
George.
Well, I was
no longer
working
in the family.
When Jim Henson died, and I have a story I believe it's in Together in the Dream. It's in one or the other, either that or Remembering the Magic, about Jim passing away and what it meant to the people that were working with him. He was a one-of-a-kind individual. Everybody loved him.
Yeah. Well, let me ask this question that it's not on our list of questions that we put together, but it's fascinating because you saw, I don't mean this to sound as bad as it will sound, but you saw a regime change. Here's Disney operating much like it did with Walt in charge as best they could, and then all of a sudden here comes Michael Eisner. What was that? And of course, Frank Wells was with him at the time. What was that like with Wells and Eisner? That had to be just... I've read books, but I would love to hear how you guys experienced that period of history.
Well, we will. Before you say it, because you were actually working there now, but I will preface it to say that our books are. We work very hard to not have any negativity in them, but we will be happy to answer this question because it affected
in a positive way.
Yeah, it affected all of us, and we were.
But it was 1984 when he was hired, and we all thought he was the second Messiah coming. He and Frank Wells. They had a big ceremony in front of the castle the morning that they started and addressed, the cast and everything, and everybody was very excited because he made us believe that he was going to let the artists be in charge again, which had not happened for quite a while. And the parks had been in a downslide. I mean, there were people wanting to come in and take over and just chop Disney World up into pieces and sell it off.
And there was a hostile takeover.
Yeah, there was a hostile takeover that was almost successful. So anyway, we were very much pro him when he came, but then he started doing things that upset a lot of people because he was changing things. And I'm not saying everything he did was wrong. It rankled a lot of people that had been there since the beginning, and there were a lot of people pushed out because he was there.
Right.
So there was animosity toward him, and toward the end, the animosity came to the Disney family. Roy Jr. being the biggest one to push it, but also Disney's daughter.
Right.
And they started a program called Save Disney.
Yeah, it was gold.
And it was the Gold brothers out of Texas whose money was helping as well. And it was a huge kind of the beginning of social media thing to actually oust him.
I'd say a good way to look at it is that Disney stock was so good before Eisner came that it would keep going up and then splitting, because we had
did that twice while we were
it would
working there.
go up into the hundreds of dollars a share and stuff, and then it would split, and it's like, wow, this is great. Well, the years Eisner was there, it seemed like it always hovered around $17 to $25 a share.
Well, the day he left, it was at 13.
Yeah,
and now it's at 105.
Yeah.
So it was hard for so many people to accept a lot of the things that he was doing, and a lot of it did have to do with, one of the expressions was always, Walt would never have done it like this. Well, he didn't like that expression. He didn't want to hear what Walt would have done. He was new and he wanted to change everything. And like I said, I'm not saying that was wrong in his idealism of it, but it just didn't work with the people that had been, with Walt since the beginning. And so he had his good points, but there were a lot of people that were against him. And when the Disney family finally went against him, he was done.
Suffice it to say, we were against him too. We were not happy.
Yeah, but we don't, like he said, we don't talk about that in the books, because I want the books to be positive experiences for people. The majority of people that go to Disney, they don't want to know the dirty stuff. Like you said, lots of books have been written about this. Some of them really not nice.
Yeah.
And, you can even read about Roy Jr. and how he pushed for this Save Disney campaign to get him off the board and out of his job.
Well,
but
it's very rare.
There's too many positive things about Disney, and people that go there to have a good time. They don't go there to hear dirt,
That's true. But it's very rare that I get a chance to talk to people who lived through that period of time. just to ask that question.
Because I think the hardest part was that the cast members who had been there since the beginning, pretty much, were suddenly having things taken away from them, perks, if you will, that Eisner didn't feel were necessary.
I'll give you an example. It was one of the biggest things that Walt Disney started was the Christmas parties for all the employees.
Oh, yeah.
And they were a big thing. And every year the Magic Kingdom would close for 3 nights early, about 7. By 7 o'clock, they had to have all the guests out of the park. And at 8 o'clock, the park Magic Kingdom reopened, and there would be all the employees for that particular night with their family and their kids, or else single people had their girlfriend or boyfriend would come in with them. And we had a ball for 4 hours.
And your entrance to the park was to give a toy, an unwrapped toy for the Marines' Toys for Tots.
And they had barrels that just...
And the Marines just gathered thousands of gifts on those nights for kids, and it was wonderful. And you had all the management people, like I did at the time when I was in management. I would go back into a character costume and perform for the evening. A lot of the management people would work so that the hourly employees, could go enjoy the evening with their families, And this was a big deal for everybody every year. Now, I know Disney is way too big now to even attempt something like this.
Yeah.
But it was still small enough when Eisner came in that it could still have been done.
Yeah.
But he decided it was an unnecessary thing to do, and so
it was costing money. He didn't want to.
He didn't want to shut the parks down at that time of year to do it, and so he decided to give the employees each tickets to go in the park with their family, and they could get discounts on merchandise if they bought it, in with the regular guests. Well, that totally blew the whole thing, because the whole idea was you were there just with cast members,
right. Right.
And it wasn't crowded, and you didn't stand in lines for hours, and he just killed that. And like he said, that was one of the biggest things that people just were not happy.
So the morale dropped quite a bit during those years.
Yeah.
Well,
back up now.
Let's go to a much more positive. I feel kind of bad. I was curious, and now I feel kind of bad.
Why'd you ask that?
Yeah, it's all your fault.
I'm sorry.
Don't ever do that again.
Yes, sir.
All right. So I thought I read somebody was working and painting underwater at 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Well, so what's the story with that? I mean, that's one, I think, a classic attraction that,
We wish it was still there.
It was very funny, and it was the only time that it happened. It was my first time to go into 20,000 Leagues after I got certified, and so we got our swim trunks on and got our wetsuits on. We had a blacklight room that we could go in and change in, so we weren't all out there, 4 of us changing in the main room of our studio. And anyway, we then got our tanks and our weight belts and our flippers and everything, and we put everything on our golf cart, had a flatbed on the back of it, and we drove up the hill to the back of the attraction at 20K, and we walked out this little beach across from where everybody loads onto the subs, and that's where we would go in.
Concrete beach.
Yeah, it was concrete. It looked like sand, but it was concrete. Hey, come on. Anyway, so, but this morning that we went, Lee brings this tube of paint out, and it was
Lee was the senior member of the corps.
Yeah, and it was an ochre color, yellowish. But anyway, he hands it to me. I went, "What am I doing with this?" It was oil paint in a tube. He says, there's a big, not a big, but about a 4-inch tear in one of the outfits or the skins that are on the divers underwater, and which of course mimicked the movie of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and their suits were this yellowish color, and he says it's pretty noticeable when the boats go by. I think they were setting me up because anyway, I says, so why the oil paint? He says, well, we can put that on underwater and it'll stay on there. Because I went, oh, well, that makes sense. It was temporary. And then we would have the figures taken out by the maintenance that night and fixed. So we went in the water, and I went down and opened up the tube and squeezed it out, and I'm putting this on. I went, well, this works pretty good. It's kind of, not great. Water and oil paint don't mix too well, but I got it on there. And then I came up to the surface, and I've got the tube in one hand, and I've got this paint all over my finger, and Lee's standing there, we're both, treading water, and I said, did you bring any rags? He says, why would I bring a rag for you? And he swims off. I'm in the middle of the whole pool with this, and I had to swim all the way over to the side, get up out of the water, try not to get this oil paint on me, and I had to find some real leaves in the foliage and use leaves to get the paint off my finger.
Now, was the attraction still, were there guests on the attraction at the time?
No, we would get there. Usually we would get to the park about an hour and a half, 2 hours before it opened every morning to go check the attractions and look for any problems or quick fixes for the day.
You were never in the water
when we were going to go in the water, we would definitely come in 2 hours early and suit up, and we'd go in there and swim around for about an hour and a half. Wow. And it was fun. You had to watch out. Your air would get turned off on occasion when you were swimming.
But in other attractions, sometimes it was rare, but they did sometimes have to go in while the show was in progress. And he has some funny stories in our 2 books about doing that.
Yeah.
We'll let people buy the book.
It seemed like Tom and I were always the 2 that got caught in an attraction. They were quite funny.
And Tom Kravitsky is the only one still there. He's an Imagineer with Disney.
No, Tom Brodowski.
Brodowski, what did I say?
Kravitsky.
Oh, sorry, different Tom.
Tom and I got caught in the Indian Village between the big paddle wheeler on one side and the train coming through on the other side.
You also got caught in the carousel of progress.
Yeah. When the train and the boat came by, we hid by a teepee real quick when we heard the boat, and then we heard the train whistle, and we turned around. No, it was train whistle first. Then we jumped around the other side of the teepee, and then we heard the whistle blow on the paddle wheeler. And so Tom says, what do we do? I said, just wave. And so we stood there and waved like we were out of animatronic. And the guests thought it was hysterical. They all came running over to that side of the boat to take pictures of the 2 guys in normal, everyday clothes in amongst the Indians.
Well, that's why I was asking you, if you were doing this at 20,000 Leagues while it was because, hey, a man in a frog suit, that would be natural, seeing a submarine.
Fun. We would sometimes walk in. We would be going through the in the tunnel area where the boats would go into the caves, and there were catwalks that would about maybe a foot and a half was all they were above the water level. And as the boats came through that area, you could walk right beside a boat, and there'd be the bubble of where the pilot was looking out of those bubbles.
So he could see.
Yeah, and they'd come by, we'd knock on the glass and wave at them, and hey. So I'm sure any guests down inside would go, "What is that pilot doing up there?"
Yeah.
Yeah, he was very upset when they took that attraction out of the park.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And that was a Eisner decision as well. So.
Yeah. Oh, Michael Eisner. We give him so much grief on this show.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Moving on.
So, one of the, and I'll say this for Tony. Tony won't say this, but Tony is an aficionado of the monorail. And
I bet he doesn't know as much as I know about the monorail.
I'm going to say no.
I'm sure that most people don't know as much about the monorail as you guys. So we understand that they have surprisingly rigorous tests for the monorail pilots.
Oh, yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about the tests that you have to pass to qualify?
Well, of course, you have to learn how to drive it, and that is part of your test. You work with a trainer. Well, at that time, I don't know how they do it now. You work with a trainer for like 5 to 7 days. First with him driving, then you drive with him there in the cab with you, etc. You have a manual that you take home with you every night, because you're not only learning how to drive and do all the things you have to do in the stations and know where everything is located, but at the time I learned to drive them, there were 4 separate electrical systems in those trains. You had to know everything about every one of them, what they ran, how to turn on and shut down a train, how to take it to the roundhouse, what to do in emergencies. I mean, it just went on and on and on.
Yeah.
So when you took your test with a supervisor and the trainer in the cab with you, you did the driving test first, and they would pull little things on you, like you'd get out of the cab to help guests at a station. They would turn all the power off, or they'd turn the sound off. They do little things to see if you'd catch it when you got back in.
Right.
Or like when they turned the power off, how fast you could power it up again and get going. There was all kinds of things they did. But then you did an oral test, just sitting with the trainer for several hours, where he would ask you every question under the sun. And because you had to go through that rigor to be able to do it, you not only were very confident in your job, but there was an incredible esprit de corps among the monorail pilots, because they did know what they were doing, basically. Yeah. A lot of people think, you just get in, you push a button, and they go. No, not so.
There's speed limits.
Dan and I, at the age of 32, were 2 of the oldest monorail pilots. Most of them were in their early 20s.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's changed now. You notice a lot of elderly people now.
Well, and they don't train them the same way anymore. No. You have people that just work in the stations, people that just drive.
Right.
It's compartmentalized a lot more. Same thing with the character department.
Which takes a lot of the fun out of it, because you knew that as a monorail pilot, you helped to load people and unload people at the stations, but you kept rotating, and you knew you were going to get to drive a few times a day.
Right.
And that was always something to look forward to.
Yeah. I always say I wouldn't want to be
No, we had to drive them backwards at one point in the Magic Kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to be a monorail pilot if I can't drive the monorail. That's
exactly. I said that too. If I was just loading people all day, I'd lose my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we'd bring the monorails out in the morning, the ones that were on the lagoon side
had to come out backwards.
Had to come out of the roundhouse, and you drove it backwards from the Magic Kingdom past the around past the Poly and into TTC, and then you had to stop at the right spot, and then you get out of that cab you were in and then walk close it down, go up to the front of the train now, which is now facing the Contemporary, and turn the front end on. So
wow,
that was something you had to look in a periscope while you drove backwards. That's the only way you could see.
That's insane.
Did you know that?
No. That's crazy.
It was crazy.
Nowadays, you'd have a camera and you'd have a video screen.
Probably.
Yeah,
I'm sure they do. Yeah,
they probably do. We're upset now because they no longer let anybody ride in the cabs.
I know.
After we were not pilots anymore, we always wanted to do that.
Right. Yeah.
So I have a question. why do some of the animatronic characters not wear pants?
Because you can't see them.
They're very strange people.
No. It's just like a theater set. You never paint anything on a theater set that the audience can't see.
As an example, the captain on the ship in by the fort where they're having the big sea battle, or the battle, not a sea, well, it is sea battle. Yeah. But anyway, the captain does not have any pants on because you can't see below the gunnel. Yeah, you can't see what's there. And it's very strange when you walk on the boat, because you can walk around behind the boat and actually go up some steps. You don't have to go through water to get to it. And first time I saw him, I just cracked up, because here were these tubular metal coming up for his legs.
Wow.
And the rest of them from then up was dressed and strange.
Now you're going to make me go around to the different attractions and try and figure out who's got pants on, who doesn't.
Try to figure it out. Yeah, I'll tell you, there is father in the last scene in the Carousel of Progress, unless that's changed, did not have any pants on either, because he stands behind the counter. That's where Tom and I hid when we got caught.
But you got your images caught in the glass of the oven door.
The oven door was popped open. You know how an oven door opened part way? Mm-hmm. It was an oven that was up higher. It wasn't, so it propped open, and Tom and I were sitting down there hiding behind there by the legs of the father without any pants on, and suddenly we realized the audience are laughing, and we're going, what are they laughing at? And we looked and could see in the reflection of the oven, we could see the audience, and we could see them looking at us. So
we both do a lot of theater, always have. Our son is a professional actor and theater director, and we know from years and years, if the audience can see you if you can see the audience can see you.
Right.
So he immediately leaned over and said to Tom, they can see us. No, they can't. Yes, they can. Yeah.
Wow. Then the hand reaches up and slowly closes the door.
Well, no, actually, what we did, we had to do a fix. If I remember right, it was on the father that we were working on, and so they left one theater or two theaters empty. So we thought we had enough time to do what we needed to do in that time frame. Well, just as we're trying to finish up, we hear the music and went, oh no. And of course, we couldn't pick our stuff up quick enough, and the next audience started coming in, so we just ducked. And of course, then when this all happened and we realized they could see us, there was nothing we could do about it. And I did want to stand up, but Tom wouldn't let me. I thought it would be funny to act like one of the figures. But when the scene was over and the audience started to move past, we just said, the heck with it. We jumped up and ran out onto the back of the set outside the thing. And as I ran past, I slammed the oven door shut. Audience found it very amusing, as did the audience coming in the next section. So,
wow,
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I got back to our studio behind Small World, and Lee says, "I heard you guys got caught in an attraction again." Oh, shut up! Happens all the time.
Suzanne, tell us what it was like to be a character in the Magic Kingdom back in those days. Did you do shows, parades? I think you even
we did everything. We did shows, we did parades, we did photo shoots, we went to Miami for 3 days and shot a national television commercial for Eastern Airlines.
Nice.
The characters back then did everything. Nowadays, again, they're compartmentalized. There are characters that just do parades and ones that do shows and ones that stand in queues and have their picture taken all day, So it's very different. But back then, you never knew what you were going to be doing, because I was usually part of the Seven Dwarf unit, mostly playing Sleepy, who was still my favorite character.
Right.
And there was a rule that if all 7 of us in Snow White were not all there was no dwarf unit. You couldn't send out just Sleepy and Snow. It had to be everybody. And so if somebody was missing and they had no one to replace him with, we would do other characters, which is how I ended up doing everything from White Rabbit to Mr. Smee, who was one of my favorites, because you could be mean to little kids. In a good way, in a fun way, not, deeply and serious. I did all kinds of mice, Cinderella mice, Bernard and Bianca from The Rescuers. I did Robin Hood in a parade once. I got to do so many things, and it was so much fun.
It was very hot.
But it was physically demanding. I mean, as a dancer, and I'd been a dancer since I was a kid, I knew that dancing is strenuous. So we danced in parades. We danced on the forecourt castle stage, you know. But in Florida, humid heat,
right.
in a parade, the temperature inside those costumes could get about 130 degrees.
Holy mackerel. Mm.
And everybody thinks that they were air-conditioned costumes. Never happened.
Yeah.
They tried early on to air condition those, and the units that they tried to use were too heavy. The characters didn't like them. They said, this is worse than being hot because it's more weight we have to carry because the costumes are heavy to begin with. They've made them better over the years. They're not as bad as they were when we were in them. But the weight and the heat and the physical exertion made it a very difficult job. And what you had to do, which was easy for me, being not only a dancer but an actress, was just put yourself in the character and try not to think about how hot you were or the limitation to your vision or any of that.
Right.
And I loved what I did. I loved interacting with the guests and watching their reactions to stuff. And I can still remember the first time I ever did the Electrical Light Parade, which was a dream of mine because it was a new parade when I came into characters. Mm-hmm. And I was really excited when they scheduled me to be in it for the Easter season. And still, when I watched the Electrical Light Parade, I tear up because that is one of the most stupendous parades ever put together. It's an amazing feat that costs a lot of money, but it is so enjoyable for the guests that I want them to ever take it away again, which they did at one point at Disney World, and then they brought it back. But being a character is something that I always remember. I remember the injuries; those were not fun. But I still have friends within the character department. We have periodic reunions. In fact, we just had one last April, and it's a reunion of the characters that were there from opening day to 1979.
Wow!
And it's not just characters; it's entertainment people. It's people that were in management at that time, and you have a bond with those people who understand what it meant to perform under those conditions.
Right.
And it's a family connection that you never lose. And it's one of my proudest things I've ever done. And I've done a lot of theater for a lot of years, and I'm still doing it. In fact, my son and I are working on a production of Hamlet right now that's going to open in September. But characters is... So many people are envious of me. Oh, my God, you did that. I want to do that. Right. Are you sure you want to do that? Let me tell you what's involved to do that, okay?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But it was really hard.
Yeah, I used to be a cast member, and I used to I did security and not envious of any character, person, because I always, saw them backstage, just dripping wet from head to toe. Like, wow. I said, that does not look like a fun job.
I would stop and give them rides in the tunnel when I'd see them walking back.
Carrying their heads.
Walking back from Main Street and stuff.
Right.
I think that when people don't understand what I mean about the heat, I say when we would go into a parade, we would take towels, like hand towel-sized towels, hook them in ice water, squeeze them out, wrap them around our bodies, and hook them with safety pins. And that would help keep the heat down in our bodies. But by the time we got to the end of the parade route, when we were in an offstage area back by the production center where all the floats went, everybody would be taking those off because they were pulling their costumes off and tossing them in big piles, and it looked like a big white steam mountain because you would see all the steam rising from all the towels in a big pile.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I got to do Baloo the Bear for one set.
Wow.
And it's because when she was in characters, actually, I got to go through a 10-day program that was for management people, and there were about 25 of us, I think. And we were from all different areas, engineers, lawyers, whatever. And they wined and dined us, Disney did, for 10 days. And we went to all the different areas or departments in the park and learned everything about Disney World. It was great to do. And then the last day, they stuck us in a costume, and I was Baloo the bear. Suzanne actually came out because she wasn't doing a set at that time, and she was able to come out and take pictures of me. But Disney took a picture of us afterwards with all our heads off back behind stage, which I have. But I said, that was fun. Don't ever make me do that again.
Yes, and he told me that night, he said, now I have an incredible respect for what you do on a daily basis.
Oh, boy. That was
Tough job. So tell everybody, RJ and Suzanne, where they can find your books, and then where they can find you on the internet if they want to, follow the story.
I'll do the book part, and he can tell you the internet part, because he's the one that does all the social networking here. Okay. I hate doing it, and he loves doing it. And the only thing I go on is my personal Facebook. But anyway, our books can be found through themeparkpress.com. You can order them straight through there. You can also order them on Amazon.com. And we have 4 books altogether right now, soon to be 5. The 2 we wrote about Disney World, Together in the Dream and Remembering the Magic. Then RJ did a book called The Design of Fear, which is about his work in Disney's Haunted Mansion, and then all of the haunted houses he's worked on all over the United States, doing 3-dimensional blacklight haunted houses. The one he did the most was on the Queen Mary in Long Beach, California. He did that for 6 years for their big Halloween event.
Nice.
And he tells funny stories, creepy stories. He tells what he was afraid of as a kid that still haunts him, and he uses that when he designs haunted houses. And then I have a book out, also done by Theme Park Press, because they decided it was a grown-up fairy tale. But it's a novel that I wrote called Ribbons, and it's a character-based story, present day, that is not just for women to read, it is for men as well.
You got that, guys?
So that's our 4 books. And the new book, I have to tell you the working title of it, which kind of fits into what we were talking about before, which our publisher likes, so I'm hoping it stays. The working title is It Will Always Be Walt Disney World. Because when Walt died, before they had begun construction of Disney World, there was talk that it was never going to be built. And his brother Roy said, yes, it is, because this is Walt's legacy. But he said, I don't want it called Disney World. I want it called Walt Disney World, because this was Walt's Florida dream. So that's going to be the title of the new book.
Okay, and now, yes, on the internet, you can find, we have a shared website, but it's still under my domain name. It's rjogren.com, and there's all kinds of stuff. I go on there quite often. I was just on there today putting new stuff in. But then
I'm theater stuff.
I'm on Twitter, and I'm also on Facebook. I'm under Randy Jack Ogren. I'm under R.J. Ogren the Artist, and then I have 2 groups that are growing rapidly. One is R.J. Ogren and Disney, and the other is the Haunted Mansion and Beyond with R.J. Ogren. And
see, this is why he's so busy. Every time I look at him, he's at a computer.
Yeah, I have thousands of followers, and the numbers are growing, which is great. I'm having fun. Get a lot of requests.
Yeah, I saw you on Facebook Live this weekend.
Was that fun or what?
That's his newest one. This is a video log he's doing that he's been doing for about a month now, and I keep telling him, you've got to get this down to 30 minutes, but he can't do it because they keep asking questions.
I was painting the sky of a big painting. People requested, they sent me photos of them in the boat that goes from
Bay Lake, from Fort Wilderness to the Contemporary.
Yeah, and so the boat's in the foreground, and in the background you see the Contemporary and Space Mountain, and beyond that, the castle way in the distance. I'm sort of messing with the perspective a little bit to make it all go together, but I have a lot of fun. I tell little tidbits, little stories sometimes about Disney and other crazy things that are going on, while I'm also explaining how I'm painting and how I'm doing it. And
and if they miss it live, it's It's still on Facebook. They can go and find it, or he also puts them on our website.
And on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're on the website. I'm doing another one this Friday at 4:00.
There you go. There you go.
Come join it. I was shocked. I was just finishing up the one this past Friday, and I looked, and it had 2,500 people that were on. I went, really?
That's great.
Well, don't you people have jobs or anything?
No.
Late Friday afternoon. What are you people doing?
Yeah, they don't. We can't thank you guys enough for coming on and telling us all these stories. As I guess, a 1976er, I appreciate, all these great stories. So, if you want to hear more, or not hear more, but read more, I highly advise that you go out and get their books over at Theme Park Press. Like they said, they have 4 books and soon to be 5. So go check them out. And we want to thank you, RJ and Suzanne, for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time and talking to us.
Oh, we really enjoyed it. Thank you both.
Enjoyed it immensely. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. And as we say, we'll see you in the park.
The Disney Parks Podcast is not affiliated with the Walt Disney Company. All Disney parks, attractions, lands, shows, event names, etc. are registered trademarks of the Walt Disney Company.
Like a bolt out of the blue, fate steps in and sees you through.